Welcome back to Flagstone Trail, listeners. You know we love diving deep into Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power.
We do.
And today, we were taking on a law that might sound a little intimidating at first.
It does, yeah.
Law 15.
Mm-hmm.
Crush your enemy. Totally.
It's a good one.
Ooh, intense, right?
It is, but
There's
as with a lot of Greene's laws, I think there's more to it than meets the eye.
There is a lot more to it than meets the eye. We're not talking about physically crushing anyone.
Right.
This is about strategically eliminating those threats to your success. And what's fascinating is that misinterpreting this law can actually backfire.
Absolutely.
Big time.
Big time. And one of the best ways to understand this law is to look at what happens when it's not followed properly. And Greene uses an example of the rivalry between the Chinese generals Hsiang Yu and Liu Pang.
Okay, so set the stage for us. Who are these guys?
Yeah.
And what happened?
So Hsiang Yu, this guy had many opportunities to completely crush his rival Liu Pang. But he hesitated time and time again. You know he wanted to win a certain way.
Oh, so like a sense of pride or a sense of honor held him back from doing what he needed to do.
Exactly. He aimed for this clean, decisive victory. And that proved to be his undoing.
Interesting.
Yeah, Liu Pang learned from Hsiang Yu's mistakes. And when the opportunity came, he took it and he eliminated his rival.
Hmm. So really what this is showing us is that leaving an enemy room to recover can empower them to come back.
Absolutely.
And seek revenge, right? It's like leaving the embers burning in a fire. You might think it's out,
right,
but there's still that risk that it's going to spark back up.
And that's a great analogy. And I think this principle isn't just something in ancient history. We can see this in our own lives. Have you ever been in a situation where you won an argument or you came out on top in a competition, but you knew that the conflict wasn't really over?
Yeah. Like that lingering tension.
Yes.
It just doesn't feel resolved.
It can breed resentment, and it can actually set the stage for future conflict.
Yeah, definitely. And I think everybody listening can relate to that.
Totally.
Feeling, that kind of uneasy feeling that something's not quite settled.
Exactly.
So how does this relate back to Law 15?
It means recognizing that to really resolve conflict, sometimes you need to go beyond simply winning the battle at hand.
Yeah.
You need to get to the root of the conflict.
Oh, okay.
And neutralize the threat.
So you're saying the answer is ruthlessness?
Well, not exactly. It's not necessarily about ruthlessness. It's about being decisive, strategic. It's about being effective. And another good example of this is Empress Wu of China. She rose to power in the world of the imperial harem. Very cutthroat.
Wow.
And she had to eliminate many rivals on her way to the top.
That is a high-stakes situation. Talk about pressure.
Absolutely.
And also as a woman in that very patriarchal society, she had to take even more extreme measures to secure her position than a man might have.
Right, totally. Yeah. Being a woman in that context, she was already at a disadvantage. She had to be more strategic, more decisive, to not just survive, but thrive. But it's important to note that these actions weren't just out of cruelty. She was doing what she needed to do to protect her position and achieve her ambitions.
Right. So it's not about being needlessly cruel. It's about being smart and calculated.
Yeah.
Recognizing threats and neutralizing them.
Exactly.
And this idea of taking decisive action to ensure your safety, your security, that's been a recurring theme, not just in history, but in philosophy too, right?
Absolutely. Thinkers like Kautilya, Machiavelli, even Sun Tzu, they all emphasize the importance of total victory, of completely neutralizing a threat.
And it's interesting because you can look at the Bible.
Right.
The Bible talks about destroying your enemies. Now, obviously, we're not advocating for literal destruction in this day and age. But how does this law apply to our lives today? How do we apply this in a modern context?
It's all about the metaphorical application. So in the workplace, crushing your enemy might mean strategically outmaneuvering a competitor to secure that promotion you've been working towards.
Okay.
Or removing a toxic person from your team so that the group as a whole can be more successful.
So it's not about destroying someone. It's about removing that obstacle.
It's about strategic banishment. Removing harmful influences from your sphere of influence, whether that be in your career, your relationships, or even your own habits.
Okay. So you're essentially cutting off their ability to negatively impact you. And it makes me think of like the Treaty of Versailles after World War I. Some historians argue that the very harsh punishment that were imposed on Germany ultimately led to more resentment. And that actually fueled the rise of Nazism.
It's a really interesting point.
So could that be seen as an example of
Yeah.
Law 15 backfiring?
It's a complex historical event, but it certainly raises questions about the potential consequences of crushing an enemy. Did the Allies go too far in that situation? Did they end up creating more problems than they solved? It's something to think about.
It seems like applying this law effectively requires us to really think carefully about what we're doing and think about the long-term consequences.
Absolutely. It's about understanding that there is this delicate balance between being decisive and recognizing that your actions can have these unintended consequences. It's something to keep in mind.
It's a lot more nuanced than I think we originally thought. When we first saw this title, Crush Your Enemy Totally,
Right.
we're thinking, whoa, that's a little bit much, but it's so much more than that.
Yeah, it's much more complex.
It requires a real deep understanding of the situation
For sure.
and the players involved. And I think that's a great point to actually pause for now. We are going to come back in part 2, and we're going to really look at concrete examples of how we can apply Law 15, specifically in our professional lives.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. All right, so let's bring this Law 15 down from the historical examples down to the everyday. Let's look at some situations you might face at work.
Okay, yeah, crush your enemy totally sounds pretty intense.
It does.
So how do we apply this in the office without getting HR called on us?
Exactly. Right. So remember, we're always talking metaphorically here, not literally. So let's say you're dealing with a colleague, maybe someone who constantly undermines your work. Maybe they take credit for your ideas. Maybe they're even spreading rumors to damage your reputation. This is an enemy to your success.
Yeah, we've all worked with that person at some point.
Yeah.
Super frustrating. How do we crush them without stooping to their level?
That's the key. We don't stoop. We rise above. So first, we gather evidence, document their actions, their words, specific instances, really build a solid case, and then strategically present this to your supervisor or to HR. This isn't about gossiping. This is about protecting yourself and your work.
So it's like a preemptive strike, like you're disarming them before they can do more damage.
Precisely. Yeah. You're exposing their behavior, creating a record of their actions so they can't hurt you anymore. You're crushing their ability to manipulate.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, but what about situations where maybe a direct confrontation isn't an option, like dealing with a difficult client or a demanding boss?
Yeah.
What do we do then?
Good point. So in those cases, crushing takes a different approach. It could be setting very firm boundaries. It could be refusing to engage in their power games, maybe redirecting their attention to something else.
So instead of this head-on battle, you're like outmaneuvering them, like using their own energy against them.
Exactly. It's like judo. Think about it. Using their weight to throw them off balance. So, for example, if you've got a boss, a micromanager, try to anticipate their needs. Give them updates regularly. Show them you're competent. That might just crush their need to constantly be in control.
Okay, so it's like understanding them, maybe their insecurities, and using that to kind of neutralize their power.
You got it. And that goes for personal relationships, too. Think about toxic friendships, romantic relationships that are just draining you.
Oh, man, those are so hard to deal with, especially with all the emotions involved. It can be so hard to separate yourself.
Absolutely. But this is where Law 15 reminds us that the most powerful move just might be walking away, getting out of that negative environment.
That takes a lot of strength, though. It's almost like admitting defeat.
But it's not. You're prioritizing yourself,
Yeah.
your well-being.
Your mental health.
You're taking your power back.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
So you're taking control, reclaiming your power, and creating an environment where you can thrive.
It's not about seeking revenge or inflicting pain.
Yeah.
It's about protecting yourself,
Exactly.
your goals, and your mental health, taking those threats out.
That is the essence of Law 15.
Okay, so this has given me such a new perspective on this. When I first read Crush Your Enemy Totally, I was a little afraid. But now I'm seeing it's not about being a jerk at all.
Yeah.
But we do need to talk about the pitfalls.
Yeah.
We talked about the Treaty of Versailles. What are some other ways this could backfire?
Oh, of course. Any powerful tool can be misused, right?
Right.
So if you apply this blindly without thinking about the context, you can create more problems.
Right. It's not a license to just be mean. So how do we avoid that? How do we apply this Law 15 ethically, effectively? It's a powerful law.
Oh, that's where the nuance comes in.
Okay.
And that's what we're going to talk about when we come back for part 3.
Okay, so we are back. Final part of our deep dive into Law 15, Crush Your Enemy.
Totally. We've really gotten into the history, the psychology. We've even looked at how to apply this, especially in the workplace.
We have, and we even talked about how this law can backfire if we're not careful,
Right.
right?
We don't want to misuse it.
Exactly. So now let's really dive into the nuances. How to apply Law 15 ethically, effectively.
Okay, so what are the key things we have to keep in mind? Well, the most important thing is self-awareness. You really have to examine your own motivations. Are you coming from a place of self-preservation? Or is it, ego, revenge? Are you hungry for power?
Yeah, those good questions to ask ourselves, right? Because it can be so easy to lose sight of our true intentions.
Right, and if our motives are rooted in negativity, that's when Law 15 will backfire. We end up creating more problems for ourselves and damaging our own reputation.
Okay, so that's step one. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. What's next?
Next, context. Remember, it's not about aggression. It's about understanding the threat, the power dynamics, figuring out how to neutralize the situation. It's like chess.
Oh, okay.
You have to think strategically.
Yeah, you wouldn't sacrifice your queen to take out like a pawn or something.
Exactly. You've got to choose your battles carefully. Sometimes the best thing to do is just ignore it.
Right. So how do we know when a threat is serious enough that we need to, crush it?
It's a judgment call. Is this person or this situation actually holding me back? Are they harming my reputation, sabotaging my work? Are they stopping me from reaching my goals? If the answer is yes,
Okay.
it might be time to take action. Maybe gather some evidence, set those boundaries, or remove them from your life.
Right. But we want to do all of that with integrity.
Hmm.
We don't want to stoop to their level. No rumors, no personal attacks, nothing unethical.
Absolutely. Two wrongs don't make a right. And in the end, you want to be able to hold your head high. You did the right thing.
Exactly. And it's better in the long run.
Yeah, right.
People trust someone who is fair and consistent.
Absolutely. That's how you build trust, how you earn respect.
So it's about being the bigger person, rising above it, upholding your own standards, even when you're facing these really difficult situations.
That's the key takeaway here. It's a more powerful and a much more sustainable approach.
Okay, so to recap, to use Law 15 effectively and ethically, we have to be self-aware, understand the situation, and always act with integrity.
That's it. It's not about revenge. It's about self-preservation. It's about creating a better environment for yourself.
Powerful stuff. And with that, that is it for this week's Flagstone Trail Deep Dive. Thanks for listening, everybody.